working with other teams, resolving conflicts around prioritization become what you spend most of your day doing as a manager. Whereas when you're more of a doer, you don't have to worry as much about those types of complexities. In many ways, the people management aspect, when you're an individual contributor, allows you to focus more on the core of your job responsibilities.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Hatchpad Insight. I'm Tim Winkler, the creator of Hatchpad, the community connecting progressive engineers with emerging startups. If this is your first time here, don't forget to hit subscribe for updates on new insight interviews like this one. Today, we're chatting with Tushar Kirtani, the VP of Product at KEVEL, an ad tech startup headquartered in Durham, North Carolina. Tushar, thanks for hanging out with us at the Hatchpad.
Of course, Tim, thanks for having me.
Why don't we start with a quick intro on your background leading up to your current role with KEVEL?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, I started off in engineering and consulting, and then primarily had experience in financial services in New York. Went back to school to get my MBA and then made the transition to startups. I worked about 6.5 years at Pocket, early stage consumer startup that was acquired by Mozilla about 3.5 years ago. And then about last November, I made the transition over to KEVEL, which is headquartered in North Carolina, where I'm based, and have been leading the product side there.
Very nice. So at KEVEL, tell us a little bit more about what you're building there.
Yeah, so KEVEL, we think of ourselves as an API company that allows other companies to build custom ad experiences. So some of our clients are folks like Strava, who use us to promote their premium subscription, and everyone else who does sponsored listings or other use cases like that. We make it really easy to get the power of building an ad server without having to spend all the resources yourself to do that.
Excellent. All right, let's jump into the heart of the discussion here. So today we wanted to discuss the role of product manager and understand the major differences between a doer type of PM and a manager type of PM. If you want to maybe dissect that a little bit for us and explain how you would differentiate those two types of product management roles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest difference for me between being an individual contributor versus a manager of product managers is the importance of having a process and systems. So, as an individual contributor, it's easier to go about understanding a customer's use case, figuring out what are the problems that they're experiencing, trying to achieve, and how you might be able to impact them. And when you start managing a group of product managers, it's more critical that you have good processes in place to ensure good outcomes across your team. So it becomes even more critical to make sure that you're standardizing things like customer discovery. What are the templates you're using to communicate? What are the business objectives? What are the problems you're trying to solve? Things like that. And so transitioning into this most recent role, managing the product team at KEVEL, having those types of standardizations has become even more critical.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm curious, you've seen the role from multiple angles. Can you explain a little bit more about that process and going from more of a doer PM to a manager type of PM?
Yeah, I think as a doer, it's a lot easier to go really deep on the problem at hand. You're able to spend a lot more time digging in on customer issues, talking with maybe your customer success or support team, doing user interviews, things like that. As a manager of product managers, it's critical that you figure out how you can leverage your team to extract those types of insights without you having to be involved in all of the conversations as well. So it's really about getting leverage and being able to communicate the most important assumptions, whereas you have a little bit more freedom and flexibility to go super deep on a particular use case. when you're kind of involved in the day to day.
Excellent. Yeah, I think one thing that might be helpful for our viewers to get a better grasp of which route might be the preferred for them is to understand, what you sacrificed versus what you gained transitioning from a doer to a manager. Obviously, sometimes, there might be a compensation increase if you're managing resources underneath you, but what might you be giving up if you're taking on that type of a role?
As a manager, I think one of your primary objectives, beyond ensuring the appropriate business outcome, is to really enable your team. And so that means everything from designing job plans, doing coaching, a lot more of the people management aspect uh, is part of your day to day as a manager. Working with other teams, resolving conflicts around prioritization, become what you spend most of your day doing as a manager. Whereas when you're more of a doer, you don't have to worry as much about those types of complexities. In many ways, the people management aspect, when you're an individual contributor, allows you to focus more on the core of your job responsibilities. Um, and so that's probably the biggest difference and like the biggest sacrifice. I was having a conversation with somebody on my team who was contemplating, wanting to go down the managing the product route, and explaining that those are the trade-offs, right? Like, you don't get to spend as much time doing customer discovery, chatting with folks, when a lot of your time is around coaching, building out job plans, working on kind of prioritization roadmaps, things like that. Higher level strategy type initiatives that impact the day to day is kind of the trade-off that maybe people sometimes don't consider when you think about, oh, it's just natural that I move into a management role because of things like potential increase in compensation and things like that. One of the things that was really great about Pocket, the last company I worked, and Mozilla, our acquiring organization, was that the company's management team actually made it okay, to stay an individual contributor, meaning you don't have to go into management to get those merit increases or increased scope of responsibilities. And really, management is a skill that needs to be developed just like coding or product management or being a great designer. And it's something that you can get trained in and develop expertise in over time as well.
Yeah, that's super helpful intel. I mean, bigger picture too, just from a talent and culture perspective, your talent retention is going to be a lot better if you're making sure ahead of time, you're going into the role for the right reasons. So, adding that perspective, I think, is certainly helpful for the viewers. I am curious on your thoughts on the product management role and how it differentiates based on the different stages of a startup. So, obviously, startups, that name gets thrown around quite a bit and sometimes is bundled into companies from 10 to 500 plus employees. Obviously, different funding, all of these factors that play into the different stages of a startup. How would you say the product management role differs from maybe very early stage, call it 10 employees or less, to maybe a startup that's 50 to 100 employees?
I think when I joined Pocket, I was kind of in that 10 to 15 employee route. And one of the things that was critical to the success of the company was really trying to find product market fit. And when you are a product manager at such a small or early stage company, what you're really doing is agreeing to be a generalist, right? So you may not have a full-time marketer who can come up with copy. You may have to pull your own data to understand the impact of A/B tests. And so you wind up getting a really wide breadth of experience, but also having a lot more responsibility across various functions, right? Doing the user testing, right? You may not have a user research team. Having to work directly with the engineers on use cases, prototyping, QAing, kind of the whole spectrum of what it takes to get a feature validated to suggest, hey, this is going to be impactful to whatever metric you're trying to move, all the way into, all right, how do we do implementation? So I think at an early stage, it's much more of a generalist behavior, and you get to go wide in a number of domains. And I think once you have found that product market fit or seen the company grow to that 50 to 100 stage company, what you really find is that it's about optimization, right? And so you may be focused on a particular part of the product, which has its own sets of maybe users or KPIs that you're trying to, key performance indicators that you're trying to affect. And at a larger company, you also have to worry a little bit more about coordination and sharing the strategy and the vision behind what you're trying to do, um, in a way that has its complexities versus a company that's 10 or 15 people, where you may be able to fit, the entire team in one Zoom room or one, physical meeting space, and everybody understands in lockstep what everybody else is doing. There are much more communication challenges and prioritization that needs to happen across teams that can impact kind of the projects that you're working on, or the speed with which you're able to get information to make informed decisions about where to go with the product.
Yeah, really interesting. I'm curious, just from your perspective at KEVEL, what was the size of the company when you joined, and what's the size of the company today?
I believe when I joined, it was a little under 50 people, and today it is around 58, with plans to continue hiring throughout the year across engineering, product, sales, you name it. It's an exciting time to be here.
What is the size of the engineering and product team out of the 50 plus employee headcount?
Yeah, the engineering team is about 20 folks. We have a couple of managers, a director of engineering, a VP of engineering, and then for the most part, individual contributors. And then on the product side, we have 3 product folks, a product designer, with plans to hire a couple more PMs through the end of the year.
Very nice. Tushar, thank you for spending time with us and giving your 2 cents on the role of the product manager. It's very helpful.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Of course. If you enjoyed this discussion, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like this one.